Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Chris Anderson, who's joining us from Rank the Vote, Ohio. Thank you very much for being here. We're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about Rank the Vote, which we've been hearing about a little bit from time to time, and we know that there's a number of people that are opposed to it in the legislature. We're trying to stop it from being banned in Ohio. Chris is a lifelong Ohio resident. He grew up in Cincinnati, but he's lived in Columbus for several decades. He spent his career in the IT industry, and he's been working as a software developer, a trainer, project manager, proposal writer, and client interface contract manager. His experience is primarily in large software development projects, which probably feeds into the ranked choice voting thing pretty well. It's all about the numbers and how things are figured, and it's a little bit above my pay grade, but I think that's something Chris is familiar with. He has developed an interest in common sense democracy reforms, and he's been studying ranked choice voting and other voting methods for the past several years. His bachelor's degrees in system analysis and mathematics from Ohio University in Oxford, and his master's degree in computer and information scientist from OSU really qualifies him to be a great asset for the ranked choice voting agenda. Chris, on the personal side, has been married to his wife, Jill, who's another lifelong Ohio resident for more than 25 years, and he has two sons. They're both ardent Columbus Crew soccer fans, and I know we have a Columbus Crew soccer fan amongst us. Karen Adams is she's got the love thing going up. She's really totally into the Columbus Crew. So, okay, take it away, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. I'm extremely happy to be here. Talking about ranked choice voting is something I enjoy. And as Debbie said, if you have questions during or if you want to wait till after, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's hope this all works properly. All right. Can someone give me a thumbs up? Can you see
Yes.
my screen? Okay. Very good. All right. Um, All right, so here's what we're going to do today. You can see the outline here. But like with any of my talks, I like to tailor it to the people on the call. So if you have questions, again, don't afraid to ask because I don't want to lose people. Oh, what happened here? Nope, give me a second. For some reason, my presentation just died.
Oh, dear.
Give me 1 minute.
Okay. I'm seeing it. It looks like the YouTube is
Yeah,
see it.
just give me 1 minute here. All right, hopefully we're back in business.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So a few things to clarify as we get started. Number one, I'm a volunteer. I'm a volunteer for Rank the Vote Ohio, but I have done this kind of talk numerous times. I want to stress from the beginning, and I want to stress this very clearly, that ranked choice voting is a non-partisan issue. People tend to try to assign some sort of party slant to this. I had a friend of mine once who came up to me and said, when I was describing ranked choice voting, he said to me, "Oh, I heard that this is just a plan to get more Democrats elected." I'm like, if you stop and think about it, party has nothing to do with the way ranked choice voting works. So this is something that sometimes both parties fear, but neither party should. The other thing I want to stress is I'm going to be talking today about ranked choice voting where we have a single winner. So I'm talking about things like senator, governor, mayor, where a single person is elected. There's a different aspect to ranked choice voting when you have a multi-winner election, like, hey, you've got a city council and you're electing, 3 people to fill 3 empty slots. We really don't have time to go into all of it, so I'm going to focus today on single winner elections. Okay. All right, let me keep going. Shortcomings of our current election system. Y'all didn't know it, but you signed up for a pop quiz today. So we're going to record the results and report them to your spouse, and your parents. I'm just kidding. But I'm giving you the questions ahead of time. We'll talk about these again near the end of the presentation. All right. So during my talk, I'm going to talk a lot about comparing ranked choice voting with plurality voting, and sometimes called first past the post. I'm probably going to refer to it as plurality voting most of the time. So plurality voting is what we predominantly have in the United States. You all know how it works. You go into the booth. There's a bunch of names. You either electronically or actually circle an oval next to exactly one of the candidates. So you cast a vote for one person. And one of the biggest drawbacks of plurality voting is it's highly susceptible to the spoiler effect. Um, and we'll get into that. Probably you all are familiar with this. I don't need to go into great detail. I'll talk a little bit more about it here on the coming slides. But as you all know, what happens when you have a two-party duopoly and single vote is most of the time you go in to cast your vote, you're picking the lesser of two evils. I mean, you really don't have much of a choice. It's this person or that person. And usually you decide by saying, well, I'm not sure I like either of them that much, but I really don't like this one person over here. Okay, now we're going to look at some actual data. So, and I've picked data from Ohio congressional primary elections. And one of the reasons I did not pick congressional general elections is, as probably most of you know, with our gerrymandered districts, our congressional elections in Ohio are really boring. If you're a Republican running in a Republican district, you're going to get elected. If you're a Democrat running in a predominantly Democratic district, you're going to get elected. If you look at the results, it's really kind of sad, actually. We have many cases in Ohio over the past 10 years, actually even further, but past 10 years, where the winner of the general election either gets 80% of the vote or they simply run unopposed. So by the time you get to our congressional elections in November, there's really nothing that you're doing. The person's already been decided. So I went back and looked at primary elections, and I'm going to cite some examples where the winning candidate received the plurality. So that means they received more votes than anybody else, but not necessarily majority. So the amount that they received did not exceed 50% of the votes. And you'll see as I go through here real quick that there's both, I'm going to cite both Democrat and Republican primaries. So let's talk about this one for a moment. This was 2024, District 2. The winner, David Taylor, received 25.5% of the vote. So that means 74.5% of the people did not vote for the winner. And I think this list, I'm going to do the math here quick. Actually, I cut it off. This list actually goes on. There are many candidates. And the second place person got 22%. So obviously, most people would look at this and say, yeah, David. And by the way, these examples that I cite, I don't know any of the people except for one of them. I don't know any of these people personally. I wouldn't know these people if they were in the same room with me. So I'm not picking on individuals here. I'm just showing general election or generally showing primary results here. So David Taylor wins, he had 25% of the vote. This is 2018. Troy Balderson won that election primary with 29%. The second place person, Melanie, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, 28% of the vote. So these are close elections where the winner didn't get even close to 50%. 2018, District 12, Danny O'Connor got 40%. 2020, District 4, Shannon Freshour got 47.5, but the other two people had 29 and 23% of the vote. Here's another one where the winner did not get 50%. Laverne got 47. The next person got 41%. This one's the winner got 35%. The next person got 31%. Now, let's talk about the spoiler effect for a moment. Many of you on this call, I'm going to guess, are old enough to remember the 2000 presidential election. And you look at the numbers at the bottom. George Bush, 48.85, Al Gore, 48.84%. So as it says at the very bottom, I hope you can see it, it says a 537 vote difference in the state of Florida. And you look at Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader got 97,000 votes. So it raises the obvious question, right? I mean, the Monday morning armchair quarterbacks are going to say, did Ralph Nader cost Al Gore the presidency? Because the perception is that of the Ralph Nader voters, if he wasn't in the race, more of them would have voted for Gore than Bush. We'll never know because we never collected that data. We never asked those Nader voters, who's your second choice if Nader is not a viable candidate? 1992. Some of you may even remember Ross Perot. Some of you may be old enough. I am, by the way. I'm definitely old enough, and I do remember Ross Perot. So you can see the percentages here. Bill Clinton, 43%, George Bush, 37.4, Ross Perot, 19. The general consensus, although again, we don't know for certain, is that Ross Perot might have cost George Bush the election. The perception maybe of the 19% of the people that voted Ross Perot, maybe if he was not in the race, maybe they would have voted for Bush instead of Clinton. Again, we'll never know. We didn't collect the data. Everyone good so far? Anybody have any questions? Okay. So what is ranked choice voting? Well, ranked choice voting is simply an alternative, and I think it's kind of a no-brainer, superior method to plurality voting. So again, in plurality voting, you go and you circle one oval next to the one candidate you're voting for, and that's it. Some detractors of ranked choice voting will say, well, they'll throw out criticisms. They'll say ranked choice voting is too complicated. I think we should throw out criticisms and say plurality voting is too crude. You asked me one bit of data, who I'm voting for. You don't know anything about my preferences other than the one person whose oval I circled, right? So in ranked choice voting, you say, hey, here are all the candidates. So picture whether there's 3, 4, 5, or more candidates on the ballot. You can rank them. You can say, this is my first choice. This is my second choice. This is my third choice. In just a moment, I'm going to show a couple of very brief YouTube videos that kind of describe how the tabulation is done. But essentially, I like to encourage people to think of ranked choice voting. I like to think of it as smart voting. When you cast your ballot where you pick your first choice, second choice, third choice, you can think of this as a smart ballot. And your smart ballot essentially says, use my first choice as my vote, period, unless and until that person is eliminated in a runoff. If my first choice is eliminated in a runoff, then my second choice is now my vote, period. Unless and until my second place person is also eliminated in a runoff. And then my third choice is my vote. And to win a ranked choice voting election, you have to win a majority, not just a plurality. So you have to get to 50% plus one. So the example you see here on this slide, this is actually from the state of Maine. The old way on the left, where it says current ballot, this would be plurality voting. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 choices, and you can write in, and you've got 5 ovals in the second column. You have to circle one of them. That's what we're all used to today, plurality voting. You pick one. Their new ballot in Maine, because Maine uses ranked choice voting, is you see they've got more columns there, and you rank your first choice, second choice, third choice, and so on. And the simple rule is circle one oval per row and one oval per column. There should only be one circled oval per row and per column. Now, a lot of these discussions about ranked choice voting, we kind of assume a paper ballot, and we're assuming these columns and ovals and circling. But I know where I vote, it's a machine, right? And I'm not actually using a pencil, and I'm not actually circling an oval. I'm using a touch screen. As Debbie said in the intro, I'm an IT guy. I look at these touch screens and say, well, wait a minute, if you want to introduce a ranked choice ballot, we can make this almost idiot proof, right? You show me the candidates and I would say, who is your first choice? Pick the name. You touch the name, it moves over to the left and says, here's your first choice. Now, who's your second choice? And I'm only going to show you the remaining candidates. You've already picked one as your first choice. I'll take that person off the list and say, here's the remaining four candidates. Who is your second choice? So if we get to where we have relatively smart electronic vote casting machines, this could be made really simple for people. The user interface would not be difficult to design. With the paper ballot, you have to give instructions saying only circle one oval per row and one per column, but they're still not too difficult. All right, so as I said before, how do we decide the winner? You decide the winner by one of the candidates achieving the majority of votes. This can either happen right away, and I want to stress this point. So if you go into an election, everyone casts their votes, and you take a look in the first round and say, I'm going to count all the first place votes, and one of the candidates got at least 50% plus one, the election's over. There are no runoffs. The candidate got more than 50% on the first round. Now, if none of the candidates achieve that 50% plus one threshold, what you do is you take the last place finisher, the one who got the least number of first place votes, and you eliminate them. And we'll see this here in a minute in the short video or videos that I'm going to show. All right. Speaking of videos, let's move to that. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to click the play button here, and you all tell me whether you have any trouble hearing and seeing it.
We can see it. Can't hear it.
Can't hear it?
No, but we can see it.
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry, you guys said you cannot hear it?
No,
All
we
right,
can.
give me one. Give
We
me
can.
1 second here. I'm gonna try something again. Let me try resharing and seeing if I can get the here we go.
Pick your favorite color.
The ranked choice voting way.
Instead of voting for just one color, you get to rank your top 3.
Well, purple is the best, but if I can't have purple, I want blue. And if neither of those wins, I guess I can live with orange.
Now, let's count up everybody's votes.
Under ranked choice voting rules, it's not enough just to get the most votes. You need a majority.
More than 50% of the votes.
Purple's ahead, but it has only 7 votes.
It needs at least 11 to win.
So we eliminate the color in last place.
Sorry, orange fans, we're going to your second choice.
2 more for green,
1 for purple.
but no color has 11 votes yet.
Still no majority.
Bye-bye,
blue.
1 more for purple,
4 for green.
and we have a winner.
The ranked choice voting way.
All right. I've got another video I could show, but let me ask people on the call real quick. Hang on just a minute. people understand so far? We can do another video that kind of describes it again, but are people following how ranked choice voting works?
I think so, but it might be helpful for other people who might be viewing the video later if we saw the next video.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Why not? Let's do it here. Give me a sec.
So, what is ranked choice voting? In most parts of the United States, voters select a single candidate for each position on their ballot, and the candidate with the most votes wins. This is known as single choice winner take all, which can sometimes result in the election of a candidate who earned only a small percentage of the vote, even when the majority of voters supported other candidates. But that's not the only way of electing our leaders. Ranked choice voting is another voting method which allows voters to rank their candidates in order of preference. In a ranked choice voting election, a candidate needs to earn more than half of the votes to win. All first choices are counted, and if a candidate has a majority, then they win, just like any other election. If not, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked that candidate as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. This process continues until a candidate earns a majority and is declared the winner. Let's look at an example. Here, you select orange as your first choice candidate, yellow as your second, pink as your third, and green as your final choice. The first choices are counted. Yellow earned 35%, orange 21%, pink earned 28%, and green earned 16% of the vote. Because nobody won more than 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked him as their first choice have their ballots count for their second choice. This continues until a candidate receives more than half of the votes, or 50% plus 1. So what are some of the benefits of ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting provides more choices, allowing more than two candidates to compete without fear of splitting the vote among like-minded individuals. Sometimes voters feel pressured to vote for the lesser of two evils. Ranked choice voting allows people to vote for their favorite candidate, not just against the candidates they dislike. With ranked choice voting, we see more positive campaigns and less negative advertising. Candidates are encouraged to reach out to as many voters as possible, including those supporting their opponents. They can build a winning coalition with like-minded candidates to earn voters' second and third choices. It's time to fix our democracy and make our elections work better for everybody. We can do that with ranked choice voting. Visit www.fairvote.org.
All right. So the next few slides I'm going to skip over because they try to explain in slide form what those two videos just explained. So let me stop before I do that, though. And does anybody have any basic questions about how ranked choice voting ballots are tabulated?
I just have a little question about the degree of training that might be necessary for boards of elections when they're tabulating these, whether that will cost a lot more or anything like that. That some of the complaints that I hear from the opponents are that it's going to be more expensive, more time consuming. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I think we have to be honest. If we were to implement ranked choice voting, and the first question is, well, where and to what degree? So for example, if we were to try to implement it all across Ohio tomorrow, it can't be done tomorrow, right? I mean, Debbie, you're exactly right. This would be a project. So we would have to survey all of the vendors of all the voting machines that we use in Ohio and say, does your voting machine support ranked choice voting? I don't know the answer. I think most of them do or will with a software upgrade because the voting machine vendors want to sell their voting machines to as many states as possible. And as I think I've already mentioned, both Alaska and Maine already use ranked choice voting. There's other municipalities, other cities throughout the United States that use it. So this is not a new topic for voting machine vendors, but it's just one of those implementation details. So Debbie, to answer your question, yes, it would be work. Yes, it would be a project. I'll get to this in a minute, but other people have been doing this for a long time. So this is not an insurmountable project. And to me, this is one of those, there be the upfront costs. Once you make the conversion and say, yeah, well, now we do ranked choice voting, I think from then on out, it would be pretty smooth sailing. Once we did it the first time and got through all the teething troubles, I think it would be smooth sailing after that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about tabulation? All right, I'm gonna skip through these. Again, these are just slides that kind of explain the same thing that the videos did. If we were doing this in person, I have a handout and we would actually rank some desserts, but I'm going to skip that. I'm going to move ahead now, put you all on the spot. It's quiz time. So first question, with the current system, single choice plurality wins, is it possible that the winner is the least favorite of the majority of voters? Anyone want to make a guess here?
No.
Yeah, the answer is yes, it's absolutely possible. Matter of fact, it's almost certainly happened in many cases. Anytime they win, going back, like, let's say, to the Bush Gore thing with Nader. Again, we don't know for certain, but is it possible that Bush was the least favorite of the majority of voters? It's absolutely possible. Again, we don't know for certain. You could go back to some of those primary election results that I was showing where the winner wins with 26%. We don't know for certain, but was that person the least favorite of the majority? Certainly possible. So it's hard to say how often it happens, but it is absolutely possible. And I would venture to guess that it actually happens more than we would really care to admit. All right, question number 2. How often would ranked choice voting result in the same winner as the current system? You have 3 choices: never, rarely, or often.
Rarely.
Whoever that is, that's you're a good foil. I think the answer is often. I already mentioned our 15 congressional districts, right? Unless we somehow ungerrymander our districts, it doesn't matter what election system you use for the congressional general election. If you're a Democrat in a Democrat district, you're going to win. If you're a Republican in a Republican district, you're going to win. It will make no difference whether you're using plurality voting or ranked choice voting. So, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer here. It's kind of subject to debate, but my guess is RCV would often result in the exact same winner as you would get with plurality voting. Now, some of you may say, well, isn't that discouraging? Aren't we wanting to do something different? I look at it as encouraging. People who say, oh my God, this is some radical new way to run an election and people won't know how it works and God knows what's going to happen, who we're going to elect. And my answer is, come on. For the most part, we're probably going to elect the same people we would have elected under the plurality, but it does give you a choice. And in those cases we looked at where the winner was getting less than majority, it really kind of homes in on who did the people really want to be elected. All right, we haven't really talked about number 3 yet, but we'll talk about it now. Do I need to rank all of the candidates? I'm just going to go ahead and answer that one. You don't need to. You can, but you don't have to. And I think this is an important point because the detractors of ranked choice voting like to make a big deal of this. They're going to start throwing around words like exhausted ballots and disenfranchised voters. And my personal response to that is that that's a bunch of hogwash. So I don't know about you folks, but numerous times over the last few elections, I've gone in to the ballot booth and I've looked at the races that I'm really familiar with, and I already know who I'm voting for. I already did my homework, right? And then I get to some obscure race and I'm like, I didn't do my homework on this. I don't know any of these candidates. I'm just not voting for that particular race. Well, that's exactly what people would call an exhausted ballot. Say, you didn't vote. And I say, I know I didn't vote. I didn't want to cast my vote based on just the way the person's name read to me or some other ridiculous criteria. I left it up to the people who know what they're doing. I just didn't vote for that particular race. Well, if you rank your candidates, you say, I like this candidate, and here's my second choice and third choice. And it gets down to your fourth and fifth choice, and you're like, I don't care. I don't know. If it ever came to those two, I'm just not ranking my fourth and fifth votes. So again, the detractors, so you don't have to rank all of your choices. That's not part of ranked choice voting. You can rank as many or as few as you like. The detractors will say this is a big problem. I say hogwash. It's really not any different what we have today. And by the way, if it's like a lot of elections where the leading Republican and the leading Democrat are favored to win, as long as I've ranked one of them, my vote's going to count. Because they're likely to survive the runoffs, and my vote will count for one of them until things change. But given kind of the current landscape, that's the way it works. All right, fourth question. With ranked choice voting, if a candidate receives a majority of votes in the first round, do any of the second, third, fourth, etc. choices matter? No. If a candidate receives a majority of votes in the first round, more than 50%, they win. Election over. There's no runoff. No, nobody's second, third, or fourth choice matters a hill of beans. And again, I mention this because I'm trying to illustrate how the process works and how it's not a radical process. If a candidate gets 50% of the votes right off the bat as first place votes, the election's over. They win. Okay. Any questions on that? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but since we've been talking about plurality voting and ranked choice voting, I do want to alert folks that there are actually other types of voting. Not going to go into them here, but I'm pointing this out because this is not some arcane, little-known topic. There are scores and scores of YouTube videos comparing all these different election methods. I think there are university research papers on different election methods. This is a fairly well-researched topic. So in addition to these two, plurality and ranked choice, we have approval voting. I'm not going to go into it, but you list all the candidates and you check which ones you approve, and you don't check the ones you disapprove of. You count the candidate who got the most approved votes. There's score voting. So this is, hey, I've got 4 candidates, score them all on a scale. 5's the best, 1 is the worst. Give them each a numeric score. That's score voting. I won't go into these others, but there are many different types of voting. The only 2 that are really used in the United States are plurality voting and ranked choice voting. All right, any questions on that before I move on?
This isn't really a question, but an observation. I just was remembering back in college when there was a sorority that went by what they called the black ball system, where it took three black balls to say no to somebody. And it eventually happened that people were upset with that system, so they moved to a white ball system, where instead of black balls, 3, it was how many white balls did you get, and that would be the people that would be in the sorority. And what I noticed is that it made for a lot more congenial relationships. Somebody wasn't just shut out, and I'm thinking that could. It sounds like that would be the approval one, but in the sense of ranked choice voting, it would be more congenial, really, not so much negative campaigning, which I think would be a really much preferred thing to do.
Well, it's a good segue, because next we're going to talk about advantages. And yes, what you described in terms of the white ball method sounds like approval voting. All right, so what are some of the advantages of ranked choice voting? It ensures majority support. This is kind of an interesting one to argue, because some people will say, yeah, majority, but they only got to the 50% plus one threshold because they got someone's second or third place votes. And that's all perfectly true. I mean, that's a true statement. But what it really says is the majority of folks found this candidate preferable to any other candidate. There's lots of specific arguments I've heard I like to mention. So I was in a meeting once and someone said, well, this is ridiculous. They were a detractor, right? And they said, if a candidate won 49% of the first place votes and then went through a ranked choice voting process, they could still lose the election. And my answer is yes, it would be highly unlikely that they get 49% and can't get 1 more percent through subsequent rounds, but it is possible. And the person raising this objection was making it sound like it was a grave injustice, like you could win 49% of the votes on the first round and still not get elected. My answer is 51% of the people preferred somebody else. And they have eventually agreed on somebody else, and it wasn't you. So I'm not sure that's an injustice. As a software guy, I say that's a feature, not a bug, right? So yes, it's possible you could win 49% and still not win the election. It would be unlikely, but if that happened, it meant you were a really polarizing figure that got 49% and no more. All right, and Debbie, to your point, item number 2 on this slide, curbs negative campaigning. You may have heard about the New York City mayoral primary that occurred recently, and people kind of cross-endorsing one another, saying, hey, if you don't vote for me, pick this other person as your second choice, right? So yes, it definitely encourages positive campaigning because I think, to be honest, it's a tactic that some people use today. They don't mind pissing off the other side because that burnishes their credentials on their side. But with ranked choice voting, you have to be very careful about doing that because you really want, if you're not their first choice, you want to be their second choice. So I think this divisiveness and this intentionally angering for the sake of kind of, getting the enthusiasm from your base, I think it would help in that regard quite a bit. All right, number 3, expand voter choice. This is where if I was giving a talk to libertarians or Green Party, they'd be, oh yes, this is exactly why we want this. We want people, we want a system. This goes exactly to the Ross Perot campaign back in the day, right? I have a personal friend who worked on the Ross Perot campaign. And he told me, he said, you will not believe the number of people that came up to me afterwards and said, I would have voted for Perot if I thought he had any chance of winning. So in that scenario, there's no penalty. This is one of the big advantages of ranked choice voting. If you want to vote for Ross Perot in that scenario, go ahead. If your second choice was whoever it was, Bush or Clinton, then put them as your second choice. You're not going to waste your vote. I also like to kind of point out that this may be one of those changes that kind of the benefits only happen over time. So Debbie, I'm going to pick on you. Debbie, let's say you ran for an office, but you did not get the backing of either major party, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans. And so only essentially your friends and people who knew you and some other supporters voted for you, and you got, let's say, generously 5% of the vote. But with ranked choice voting, the next election you run again, and people are saying, I didn't look at Debbie the first time, but she got 5% with not much funding, not any major backing. Maybe what she was saying made sense to people because she got 5% of the vote. So this will help people who run, maybe don't win, but they get an indication of how strong their support really is, even without the backing of a major party. So again, it really helps let the voters vote for who they really want to vote for. I always kind of joke that I could vote for my mom. I could write her in. Then I could go to my mom and say, Mom, I voted for you. Honestly, I really did. You were my first choice. Now, I knew my second choice was the one that was going to count because my mom's not going to win the election, but I could if I really wanted to vote for my mom first, and I'm not wasting my vote. All right, number 4, greater diversity. I'm going to get into this a little bit more. That one of the organizations called Fair Vote, they did one of the 2 videos that we watched. They have a lot of data on this, and I encourage you to go look at the Fair Vote site later if you're interested. But there's a fairly compelling bit of data that says ranked choice voting promotes a greater diversity of candidates. And like I said, it collects more data regarding the voters' true intentions. Back to the example, if you run and only get 5%, but maybe the 5% is a lot more than you thought you were going to get, it gives you encouragement to run again. All right, here's some data from the Fair Vote organization. I'm not going to go into this in great detail because I know that it's 12:45, and I do want to briefly talk about Alaska's 2022 congressional election because I think it is a very interesting case study of ranked choice voting. But I'll let you guys take a quick look at this slide. Again, this all comes from the Fair Vote organization. I'm just going to skip over this because I also want to talk about common misconceptions. So one of the misconceptions, Debbie, maybe going to your point earlier that you asked, say, isn't this complicated or expensive? My answer is, yes, it's a project. It's a change. We'd have to implement the change. But bear in mind that other countries, Australia, they've been using ranked choice voting for 100 years. So people that say, oh, it's too confusing, I'm like, what? Are Americans dumber than Australians? Because I don't get it, because it's an existence proof. They've been using it for more than 100 years. And sometimes they'll say, well, it's too complicated to implement. And I'll say, well, Maine figured it out. Alaska figured it out. Australia figured it out. Ireland figured it out. Are you saying our boards of elections aren't as competent as, because again, they're already using it. This is not a hypothetical question here. All right. Dubious arguments, too confusing. Voters will not understand how to rank their choices. I absolutely 100% agree that there would have to be voter education. If, we need to produce videos that say, look, here's how you rank them. Make sure you only circle 1 oval per row and 1 oval per column. Yes, there would have to be voter education. Is it really confusing? To be honest, I think grade schoolers can rank their favorite desserts and rank their favorite teams. I think if you're 18 years old and a voter, I think you can understand how to rank candidates. Another argument violates the one person, one vote principle. People say this, and I'm kind of mystified by this. This is a classic example where I have heard Ohio legislators kind of say this thing, and I'm like, do you really not understand how it works, or are you just intentionally lying? Because it does not violate the one person. Matter of fact, I think it better supports the one person, one vote principle. Your vote is never averaged or portioned off as a fraction. Your vote always counts for whoever's at the top of your list that hasn't been eliminated yet in a runoff election. Number 3, compromises election integrity. I think this is an interesting one also because in my mind, there's 2 parts to election integrity. Number 1 is who is voting. And ranked choice voting has nothing to do with who is voting, has nothing to do with the voter rolls or who's eligible to vote, nothing to do with it whatsoever. So the only way when people say it might compromise election integrity is that they somehow again think that our board of election or foreign agents are going to somehow affect the tabulation process. And if they can affect the tabulation process for ranked choice voting, they can affect the tabulation process for plurality voting. So I'm really disappointed when people say this because they're not sometimes clear as to what they really mean when they just throw out that blanket statement that it compromises election integrity. All right, number 4, we'll slow down the tabulation of election results. And this is one area, again, I'm a former IT guy, that I get kind of like, what? Because I used to teach computer science at Franklin. And to be honest, I think my first year students could write their lab programs that would correctly implement ranked choice voting. And we all know how fast computers are. By the time you collected all the data, it'll be a number of seconds before it'll calculate the winner, including running all the runoffs that it may need to run. And again, Alaska does. A lot of people like to kind of put up a smokescreen. They'll make a statement like the following: Alaska uses ranked choice voting, and it took Alaska 28 days after Election Day to certify results. And they'll stop there, trying to lead you to the conclusion that it was ranked choice voting that caused the 28-day delay. They had to wait till all the absentee ballots came in. It would have taken 28 days under plurality voting, but they don't say that. They just throw out those two statements and hope that you are confused. And part of me also says, well, I don't know. Don't we want a better system? And if it takes an hour longer, don't we want someone who wins a majority of the votes? So anyway, those are my reactions to these criticisms. Before I go to the next slide, real quick, I did want to talk about the Alaska 2022 congressional election because I think that's a really interesting case with ranked choice voting. So the background, for those of you that are not familiar, Alaska, because of its population, has exactly one congressman, one U.S. House of Representative person. In 2022, because of the way they do primaries in Alaska, they essentially had three people advance to the general election for this congressional seat. It was Mary Peltola, a Democrat, Sarah Palin, a Republican, and a guy named Begich, who's also a Republican. In 2022, after the first round of voting, Peltola had 40%, Palin had 31%, and Begich had 29%. By the rules of ranked choice voting, Begich was the one who was in last place. He got the fewest first place votes. So they took his 29% of the vote and looked at those voters' second choices and allocated them accordingly to Peltola and Palin. Peltola then won the election because she got more than 50%. I think this is interesting in multiple ways. Number one, if people were really interested in voting along party lines, then Palin would have won that election because almost all of Begich's, if all the Begich voters wanted to vote Republican, they would have picked Palin as their second choice. And that is not what happened. Alaska has a large percentage of independent voters, by the way. The other thing is the Palin campaign jumped up and cried foul and said, oh, this was a terrible election. Peltola only won because of ranked choice voting. And my answer is, I think Alaskans elected who they wanted in that election, and they got Peltola. Now in 2024, just as a footnote, Begich and Peltola ran head to head and Begich won. But anyway, okay. What's next? My answer is go to the rankthevoteohio.org website. If you're not one of our supporters, sign up to be a supporter. You'll join our email list. You'll get probably about two emails per month from us, keep you apprised as to what's going on. Sign our petition. Earlier at the very beginning of the call, we were just chatting about Senate Bill 63. That's a preemptive ban bill that has passed the Senate and is now with the House General Government Committee. And I want everyone to be perfectly clear about what Senate Bill 63 is. Senate Bill 63 is not a vote to use ranked choice voting. It is a bill that preemptively bans it from being used essentially anywhere in Ohio. So this is our state government telling city governments, you don't know what you're doing. We're going to save you from yourself, from this horrible evil, and ban ranked choice voting before you even consider using it. I think it's a terrible piece of legislation. I have no idea why we would preemptively ban it. I think if any town, Ohio, whatever city, small town decides they want to try ranked choice voting and they solve their election machine challenges and implement it, why not? Other cities do. New York uses it, of course, in their mayoral primary. There's between 40 and 50 other cities in the United States that use it. Why are we banning it? What's the purpose? So, all right, I'm going to stop there and open up the Q&A here. Go ahead. Anybody have any questions?
I'm not seeing hands. If you've got a question, please let me know. I don't have a question, but I'll wait till people get their thoughts together. But I do have an observation. We have in Ohio, and it's not just Ohio, this organization now called Blue Ohio that David Pepper started, that tries to help candidates who would not otherwise win in heavily red districts, and it helps fund them to a minimal extent. Well, one of our Indivisible members, Charlotte Owens, had been a candidate more than once because she said, "I know I'm going to lose, but I get a chance to speak with voters each time I run." Um, and that helps get the word out. And I'm thinking that this can be a real, ranked choice voting could be a real advantage for Democrats, in particular in Ohio, who don't maybe stand much of a chance, even with Blue Ohio, of winning in their areas. But with ranked choice voting, you had the scenario of, somebody gets 5%, and the second time around, you look at that again and say, "Oh, I recognize that person," and then the momentum builds. So it seems to me that that would be a good argument to pitch to Democrats in the legislature who might be inclined to say no to ranked choice voting.
And it absolutely works both ways. Republicans could actually make inroads into heavily Democratic areas if they supported ranked choice. Again, I'm going to stress this again. You notice when we looked at those two videos and when I described it, party had nothing to do with the way the votes are tabulated. It nothing to do. This is a non-partisan voting method.
Thank
But
you.
Debbie, you're right. I mean, part of me says this again, one of the pitches for ranked choice voting is accountability. It, you have to win somehow or another 50% plus one. If you start irritating or disappointing a large portion of your electorate, you're not going to win a ranked choice voting election.
Right. Thank you. Nancy Heil has her hand up.
Yeah, hi. I might be being dumb here, but I'm struggling with the answer to that first question on the quiz. In a plurality, is it possible the least favorite of the majority of voters win? Wondered if you could explain that a little bit more.
Sure. So again, let's go back. I don't know, Nancy, were you here when I was showing some of the primary election results in Ohio?
Yeah.
So we had winners that were winning with, say, 26% of the vote.
Right.
So my question or my thought here is, let's say you go to the other 74% of the voters, and we don't know this because we didn't collect the data from them. But if you ask them, who is your least favorite? May not be 74%, but it could be 51% said the guy that won, and I'm using the guy in a generic sense, guy or gal that won, is actually the last person I wanted to win.
Okay.
But they want to, and to be honest, again, not to get too, look at our presidential elections. How often has well, yeah. I think there are certainly times where we all know that maybe the person that won the election was not the preferred candidate by a majority of the people.
Okay. That
I don't
makes
want to
sense.
get into that because then you start talking about the electoral college and that changes things a little bit. But just because a person, so again, let's say I'm going to make this up. I'm a Green Party and I can appeal to my Green Party base, and I can get 39% of the vote. And I don't stand a chance with the other 61%, but I can get 39% of the vote. If I can get the Democrat and the Republican to split their vote, I may win with 39%. Even though you ask the other 61%, who's your least favorite? And they'll say that Green Party. I didn't want that Green Party guy, right? So again, plurality does not mean majority. So anytime you see scenarios where the person wins with less than majority, you can at least ask yourself the question, did the person who win, was that person actually the least favorite of the majority of voters?
Okay, that definitely makes sense. That clears it up. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have a question? I'm going to scroll by here and okay, Andre has one.
Okay, my question is concerning some of the criticisms that might be sort of raised against ranked choice voting. And that is that although it can be, the winner can be determined very rapidly by, fairly simple computer program, I can see that given the fact that there is that Trump raised so many questions about the fact that there was cheating in the system, I think this way there might be again a lot of opposition by the losers, saying that the way that the votes are being transferred from one candidate to another is subject to manipulation because one can't really see what the computer is doing. So could you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Andre, I agree with you. I think that's a valid concern because it just introduces at least some, I mean, by definition, it is more, ranked choice voting is more complex than plurality voting. So yes, it introduces kind of a target, right? Someone could point their gun at that and say, oh, you were using ranked choice voting. How do I know that the computers successfully ran these runoff elections? And let's face it, conspiracists will have conspiracies no matter what is said and done. But you are exactly right. Now, I think this is actually slightly less complex than some people think it is. So for instance, again, let's go back to one of the use cases I like to talk about, the Alaska election. There was only really one runoff round. They looked at Begich's 29% and said, he's the last place finisher. We're going to look at his votes, take those voters' second choice and allocate them to either Peltola or Palin. That's not very deep math. You can look and, let's just use numbers instead of percentages, right? Let's say there were 100 people that voted in Alaska. 29 people voted for Begich. It's not too difficult to look at 29 votes and say, well, of those 29 voters, what percentage of them picked Peltola as their second choice versus what percentage picked Palin? So the more rounds involved, yes, people are going to throw up their hands and say, I hope the computer figured it out right, because I have no way of knowing, after the fourth round, whether that person was eliminated and votes were transferred. So yes, you're exactly right. It is more complex by definition. One of my arguments is also, though, I think all of this data can be put in a spreadsheet. I think if we implemented ranked choice voting, I think the boards of elections should put the results in a spreadsheet where people can, there's only so many permutations, right? If you have 4 people, there's only so many ways you can order 4 candidates. And you can essentially put them all in a spreadsheet and say, this was the exact pattern of voting. And if you trust the counts of the votes, you can run it yourself. I could write a spreadsheet tomorrow that would produce a winner for a ranked choice voting from an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, the algorithm really isn't that complicated. So yes, you're right. It would be more complex. Yes, there'd have to be education. Yes, there'd have to be steps taken that people don't lose confidence, that somehow all the intermediate results are shown clearly. So yes, and Andre, you have a perfectly valid point. Yes, we'd have to be careful. Yes, it's a job. We'd have to implement it correctly. And again, I point to the fact Australia's been doing this for 100 years. Maine's been doing it since 2018. Alaska's been doing it since 2022. Other cities in the United States have been doing it. I think it's time we solve that problem instead of just saying, we can't use ranked choice voting. It's too obscure or too error prone or something like that.
I wonder if you have a state that has a Secretary of State that opposes this, what is the tactic for trying to get a state on board without the direct approval or being okay with different uh, choice? And how do you move a state toward ranked choice voting, sort of against the wishes of the Secretary of State?
Well, that's a question I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer. I can give you my thoughts. By the way, there are states that have already preemptively banned it, as Senate Bill 63 in Ohio is seeking to do. So that we definitely have those. I think there's about 10 of them. 10 states have banned ranked choice voting. I think there's a couple different things. Number one, today we live in divisive times, right? There's a lot of discussion about our political system, about our government. I think the more that people are unhappy with the results that we're seeing today, the more open they should be to change, particularly something that, again, I'm biased, but I'm gonna say it from my bias point of view, I think is a clear winner over plurality voting. So I think we need to convince people of the benefits, remind people that this is not theoretical. Other countries, other states, other cities are using it, have used it successfully. And I think I think what we really have to do is take the fear away from the politicians. If let's say I'm a politician, doesn't matter whether I'm Democrat or Republican, I'm in a safe district, right? If I'm Democrat and if I'm in a blue district, I'm feeling comfortable. If I'm a Republican in a red district, I'm feeling comfortable. Someone comes along and says, we want to do ranked choice voting. I'd be like, I just learned how to master the system as it is today. Why do I want to give this up and go to something different? So I think and I say fear, I think just like anything, there's a strategy. If you're a politician and you want to get elected, you figure out how to win a ranked choice voting election. It might be a different strategy, but it's just a strategy. And I don't think people have kind of tumbled, the politicians haven't quite tumbled to that yet. They look at this as somehow threatening the status quo rather than an opportunity for them to say, if I think I've got good policies, if I think my constituents will support me, I shouldn't be afraid of ranked choice voting.
Anybody else have a question? Mike.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about, just a moment ago we were talking, well, how do we know a computer is making the right choices? Well, let's compare that to our other choice of how we count ranked choice voting, having human beings do it. And, in our society, we've come to trust computers as being unbiased on answers in so many ways. And if we did not use, and maybe that's not what's being said, but having human beings choose, okay, the second choice was this, the third choice was this, would be more questionable, I believe. And that, I don't know if I don't really have a question there. It's just that, computers we've come to see as being, in terms of making human error, are really way down there, if non-existent as far as error. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, Mike, I might be good. I did not get a chance to mention this, but Ohio actually used a form of ranked choice voting in 5 different cities in Ohio in the 20th century. Cincinnati's the most prominent one. They used something called single transferable vote from I think it was 1925 to 1955, which was a form of ranked choice voting. So we're talking 1925 here. I don't think computers were involved in tabulating. Now, again, we're talking about like city council level. So the volume of votes is not that large. But they figured it out. They used it for 30 years. And the reason they got rid of it is they were electing too many minorities to city council. Powers. I mean, I only know this from a history book that obviously I can't attest to what happened in 1925 to 1955, but I have read history books there that in all 5 cities, it was the same thing. They adopted it, they used it. People generally seem to like it. The powers that be did not like it, and particularly, at least what the history books say, is racist powers did not like it and finally voted it out of all 5 cities that we used. But to your point, Mike, people tabulated votes then for city council using ranked choice voting, and there were no computers involved.
Thank you. Good point.
I guess,
Karen?
yeah, maybe what I'm saying is the computer doesn't seem to have a bias. But if you put human beings in there counting a ranked choice vote, there may be some bias there. Anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Karen's got her hand up.
Just a quick question. You mentioned a petition. What stage is the petition at? How many signatures do you need? And what will that petition do?
Yeah, it's not a petition in the Ohio constitutional amendment sense. It's really just a list on our website. But at this point, since Senate Bill 63 has passed the Senate with the House, if you're really opposed to it, we just need people to stay in tune with when the House, it's called the House General Government Committee, when they hold their next hearing on it, and we need people to write opponent testimony.
We're going, just to let you know, I mentioned this early before too many people got on the call, but the information that we do have about SB 63 will be in the upcoming email that you'll get. It's going to be featured as one of the State House bills to call about. There's a call script, the people on the House committee, the folks to call. So we'll encourage you to do that. I'm thinking because of this presentation, there might be more people inclined to make those calls. And you can make the calls now, and as soon as I'll be alerting you to when this comes up as opponent testimony, and then you can go ahead and write your testimony, or you can write it now and save it for whenever the opponent testimony is called for. But we'll keep on that, so you'll know. Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate that. Anybody else have a question? Andre.
Yeah, I think that the fact that SB 63 has been passed is because both parties, both the Republicans and the Democrats, are really afraid that it would affect their incumbents, and that it would also lessen the amount of control that each party has. As you mentioned with the example in Cincinnati in 1925, the fact that more minorities were actually elected means that both the Republicans and the Democrats probably had a lesser influence on the outcome. And with SB 63, it is really sad that both the that the bill is actually introduced by both a Republican and a Democrat, and essentially Bill DeMora on the Democratic side said that he opposes it because the Democrats would lose the Democratic Party, the state Democratic Party would lose more influence than they have right now. So it really is a battle. You mentioned that it's not a partisan issue, but what it is, it actually threatens both the parties and their control over who runs for election. So I think that's where all the opposition comes from. And I was wondering if you've got any thoughts about how to lessen the opposition other than just general education. Would it be to impeach, let's say, Bill DeMora and the Republican senator who sort of...
Well, well, I think this goes back to my point earlier about fear. I I I I think this is a change. I honestly believe, and it might be a question of degrees, that this is, if we used ranked choice voting, it would, to some degree, hold our politicians more accountable. And whether it's a particular, Andre, to your point, Mike, not to be cynical, but if it wasn't Bill DeMora and Therese Gavarone, there would be others that proposed a similar bill and tried to ban it. So I don't know that we need to. I think we need to lessen the fear and convince people let's shoot down these bogus arguments and get to the real reason that they're voting against it or trying to pass Senate Bill 63. And if at all possible, convince them they shouldn't be afraid that, again, if their policies are good policies and they're as good a candidate as anybody else for everybody, that they shouldn't be afraid to run under a ranked choice voting election. But I say that acknowledging much easier said than done.
I have a question about since Alaska and Maine already use it, how did they come to that decision to use it, and how well does it seem to be working as far as you know? I
Yeah.
don't know too much about how that came about.
Well, I can only speak to what I know, and I do not claim to be an expert. Maine's been using it since 2018, and I think there are still movements in Maine to get rid of it. Same way, like I said, Cincinnati for 30 years, they had to constantly fight to keep it for 30 years before it was finally voted out. In the 2024 election, sorry, let me go back. In Alaska in 2022, the ranked choice voting was introduced as part of a three-pronged improvement effort. They passed, and I forget the name, what they don't call it an issue, they call it something else, issue 1 or something. They passed a campaign finance reform, open primaries, and ranked choice voting all in one kind of legislative action.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard at the time, ranked choice voting was not the center of attention. People were vehemently objecting to open primaries. And they eventually passed it, and so that's why they use ranked choice voting. There was a very concerted effort for the 2024 election to get rid of ranked choice voting in Alaska. Well-funded, not sure where the money came from to fund that repeal campaign. But it was very interesting because on election night last November, the prediction was that the repealers were going to win and that they were going to repeal ranked choice voting in Alaska. But as I mentioned earlier, they have to wait in Alaska to get all the mail-in ballots. You can imagine some far northern village where how long does it take them to transport the ballots to the tabulation? I mean, Alaska is a huge state, and we're talking November. Who knows what the weather's like, right? By the time all the ballots were counted, the repealers lost by a margin of a little over 700 votes. So they still have ranked choice voting in Alaska. But like many of these democracy improvement issues, it's a constant fight.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I was wondering, and I wonder too about the countries that use it as a whole, like Australia, whether, what kind of success they've had, and whether their elections are deemed to be fairer than ours.
Can't really speak to it. All I know is that they've been using it for 100 years. I probably don't know how to do it any differently at this point. But I really don't know. I can't answer your question there.
Thank you. Anybody else have a final question before we adjourn? Okay. Yeah, Janie.
I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation. I did not understand it before, and your visuals were excellent. So I thank you for that. I think that anyone watching this presentation would have a much better understanding of what I've had someone try to explain it to me, but to actually see it was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And let me say that I'm happy to do this over Zoom. I'm also very happy to do it in person, because when we do it in person, like I said, we rank desserts, and I've done that before, and people are like, "Oh, now I really understand it." Once you rank your desserts from 1 through 4, and we tabulate the results right then and there, and it becomes very clear. So if you all belong to groups and want me or another speaker, we have other speakers within Rank the Vote Ohio to come and speak to your group. Do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I think Indivisible Central Ohio has had ranked choice voting person before, but we do occasionally have in-person meetings, and I can certainly recommend that we go for it again as part of one of those meetings. We will see what the team says and whether we can run another one. I'm a little concerned that, you know, if we don't get on this right away, we're going to be losing out and it'll be banned altogether. And that would be a real shame, a real shame.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris, for coming. This has been very helpful. And I did want to, I have a couple little items to discuss with the group before they leave, but thank you. If there's an update that you want to come back, and hopefully this bill does not pass within the next month or so, please feel free to, you know, be in touch. And I think this is a subject that many people are interested in, especially with the redistricting situation we just found out about. And in case you didn't know, last night the Democrats made a deal with the redistricting commission, and there will not be a referendum. They staved it off. I don't know how many of you read The Rooster, but this morning I saw an explanation in that. And my sense is that they might have made the best deal they could in the circumstances, because the referendum was going to be kind of a tricky thing and could put people in worse situations. So given that we don't have a referendum thing as an option to get better districts, this makes something like ranked choice voting even more important to think about alternative ways of electing our folks. We're stuck in a situation where we can't seem to get away from political preferences that hurt people. And I think most of us are, you know, we're, as Indivisible members, we're probably mostly Democratic, but many independents as well. And certainly we can see that there's corruption all the way around with the political system, depending on dark money and Citizens United to keep them afloat. And I think that a lot of our members would be very much in favor of ranked choice voting. So we just have to get out there and fight for it and make sure that we don't lose the chance to try it in Ohio. Any final words, Chris?
Just thank you all for having me. It was a pleasure, and appreciate your attention.
Well, thank you very much. Come back anytime. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm going to stop the recording now, and then I just have a couple more things to mention.